Dr. Mundo isn't as OP as you think he is, but why does it feel like it right now? Aside from Aloy being a walking PSA to the balance team to get him nerfed, since the beginning of the year his highest and lowest win rates patch to patch haven't fluctuated much, so what's the big deal? I know what you're thinking. I've seen Mundo with effectively 3 health bars walk down ADCs in the middle of teamfights for fun. Well, I have a theory that's got little to do with game balance directly, but instead with 2 pillars of game design philosophy: visual and audio feedback. Visual feedback can be anything from your screen flashing red when you take damage or the yellow trail on the floor when an enemy is slowed, whereas audio feedback would be audio cues you hear upon in-game events, like the coin sound of a minion being last hit or the sound cue that plays when you level up. These design choices in relation to the roles we play also heavily shape how we perceive games. In League, for instance, if you play Assassins, the sound of exhaust probably frustrates you a little subconsciously, whereas if you play top lane tanks, the sound of grasp being procced is probably the biggest dopamine hit you could get, and these audio-visual cues can affect champion strength perception too. Concerning Mundo, there's his core items. Warmog heals you to full HP out of combat, a frustrating gameplay loop to deal with at the end of laning phase. Hearth Steel adds bonus damage with a satisfying proc sound for the user, and Titanic Hydra's cleave is visually massive. Adding to this, Mundo's meat cleaver in most skins has a very punchy sound. Together, it creates a sensory overload, especially for squishy damage dealers who, if alone, are probably getting one-shot by a supposed tank whilst watching his health bar go back to full. Which brings us to the most common misconception about Mundo in my opinion. At his core, he's not a tank, he's a Juggernaut. So, what's the difference? Tank hits have more hard CC, damage mitigation, and forms of mobility often double as engage, but usually at the cost of damage. Juggernauts, on the other hand, can have CC, though typically not hard, forms of damage mitigation, and access to high damaging abilities, though again, ordinarily at the cost of mobility. Tanks are your engages and meat shields that provide a way in for your team. As a Juggernaut, however, Mundo is more closely related to a bruiser, who goes where he pleases. Usually. There's also another factor at play here. Most of the player base doesn't interact with Mundo's horrendous laning phase. He's effectively the Kayle of the Juggernaut class, so if you're a Riven, Aatrox, or Gwen player, you probably stomp him into the ground in most of your lanes. But if you play bot lane, you won't interact with Mundo until he's on spike or past the weakest part of his game, very gently skewing your perception. So, for every Mundo that one-shots your Jinx in the backline, there's also one that went 0-5 in lane to the hands of Riven or Aatrox, effectively creating a sort of top lane survivorship bias. Mundo, like any champion in their ideal circumstances, is going to feel OP, but these factors of strong visual and audio design from both kit and items, coupled with a common misconception of identity in my view, are subtle yet deeply important reasons why the community sentiment has shifted this way. That, and Aloy's pushing Mundo's pick rate up by 3 times what it used to be, isn't helping either. Now, the point of this video isn't to say that there's nothing wrong with Mundo, but what it is saying is that statistically, Mundo as an idea is far from an anomaly. I'm also not trying to rob you of your ability to complain about aspects of League's balance you don't agree with, but perhaps after watching this video, you look at things you don't like through a different lens, and maybe even believe that